The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
The Chargers absolutely dominated the Lions in the Hall of Fame game.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers.
David, we had real football being played, and there's a lot to get into from this game that the Chargers absolutely beat the Lions down in every facet.
They surely did. 34-7, had 5 turnovers that they forced in this game, and it just seemed like they were ready to go. They looked prepared. They looked crisp. They played clean football from beginning to end, and that's the way I want to start the 2025 season.
Absolutely, man, and I think the great thing about it is just, especially when you get those kind of points put up, especially when the game went the way that it did, there's so many players to shout out. So many players stood out in this game, but maybe none more than a guy named Keandre Lambert-Smith, or KLS as we affectionately know him by. He was the guy who stole the show. He was the star of the first preseason game in the Hall of Fame game, surrounded by Hall of Famers. It was him that really stood out, and it's funny to think that, someone could stand out with, a box score that looks pretty modest if you kind of didn't see the way that it happened. But again, it's kind of like what KLS has done in training camp so far, where it's like, it's not just the number of catches, it's how he's making these plays. And that was the most impressive part of the first game for the Chargers, especially knowing they need weapons. They need some of these young guys to step up. So for him to go out there, 2 catches for 43 yards, gets the touchdown, that was so awesome to see.
And because of how it was done as well, because he did it beating man-to-man coverage on both of those catches, basically. In the first one, he shakes the defender and is able to, traverse down the football field, locate the ball over his shoulder, and, receive it, in the breadbasket for like a 28-yard gain. That was a fantastic rep there. And then the touchdown was just a thing of beauty. I mean, he sets up the defender, cuts in hard on a slant route, and catches the ball and basically walks into the end zone, showing that quickness, showing the steady ability to catch the football. He really showed everything that we wanted to see. A guy that, really can take the top off of defense, but also can help you with the man-to-man coverage aspects that the Chargers desperately needed to get better at this year. So very encouraging first performance for KLS.
Yeah, hugely so. It's a 3rd and 4 where he creates, great separation, opens up a big window for Trey Lance to throw into for that 28-yarder. And then it was poor former Chargers legend DiCaprio Bootle, who I, remember most from last year. I think Jim Harbaugh not knowing his name one time when they were on the sideline, he was trying to talk to him. He was the one that got beat on the KLS touchdown. But yeah, that play, I think especially for a guy KLS's size, not a huge guy, right? How do you handle the physicality of the NFL? How do you handle guys when they're going to get up on you and try to put their hands on you? And there were a couple times where his routes were absolutely deterred to some extent by the physicality of the defense. And that is something he's going to have to continue to kind of work at. One of the ones I'm talking about also with was illegal, and he drew a flag because of the physicality.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is about KLS, especially with the 4.3 speed that he brings to the table, is you can try to get aggressive with him. You can try to jam him off the line of scrimmage. You can try to do these things. But if you don't get him,
but if you miss,
exactly,
you're in trouble. Yeah.
He can absolutely make you pay, and he's gone in the blink of an eye. So I think that was really nice to see him kind of have those moments, to see him have that first big game, to hopefully get some confidence under his belt, to be able to keep that going forward in a wide receiver room and just a cabinet of weapons that feels like it needed to be replenished, and we're kind of waiting to see which one of these young guys can step up. But speaking of young guys stepping up, how about Trey Lance, man? A dude who we've kind of laughed about at certain times just because of the last preseason game. We saw him, turning the ball over 6 times, 2 fumbles,
wasn't good.
1 loss, 5 interceptions, Tony Jefferson and his nightmares, right? He was one of the most impressive performers for Thursday night. I mean, it was 13 of 20 to 120 yards, 6 yards per attempt and 2 touchdowns. Again, especially when, he played a little over a half, right? Well, he actually played like 2.5
2.5 quarters, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they left him in longer than I thought that they would. But it was just kind of how he did it. I think that the completion percentage is going to be skewed here a little bit because I think 3 of those incompletions were just fade balls in the end zone. It wasn't really, super inaccurate passes or anything like that. But it was just, hey, no turnovers, right? Looked calm and collected. Had a, really great throw over the middle to Tucker Fisk for a big play at one point.
Nice.
Really threaded the needle there. Very, very impressed by Trey Lance's first game as a guy that we thought didn't necessarily have a chance at the QB2 spot when they signed him, but feels like he very much entered that conversation on Thursday night.
He looked like he was in command out there, Daniel. He looked very comfortable. He looked like he was prepared, and it showed in his mechanics. It showed in his performance. He was able to, thread the ball when he needed to put a little bit of heat on. He was able to do that. He threw it with accuracy. He also was able to throw with touch, which is something that he said that he wanted to get better at, is just being able to, layer those throws, being able to feather those in there. And he showcased that tonight. The
Will Dissly touchdown was an example of that.
That was a beautiful throw. I mean, an absolutely beautiful throw for Trey Lance, who has not played a lot of football, who came into the league with, a lot of pedigree, obviously being drafted very high in the first round, not being able to play a lot of football, not playing a lot of good quality football. This was a very encouraging performance for Trey Lance.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know how you could look at it any other way, but I think another impressive group besides the quarterbacks is DJ Uiagalelei even looked pretty good, but only had a couple of passing attempts, right? But the running backs impressed me, and I would start with Kamani Vidal because he's a guy that very much went into this training camp as kind of maybe even a fringe roster guy, but a guy fighting for the RB3 spot behind Omarion Hampton, behind Najee Harris. And I think he did a good job of, maintaining that at the very least on Thursday night. And I think, again, 9 carries, 37 yards, 4.1 average. That doesn't sound that great, right? Has a long of 16, also has 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He had like 3 or 4 goal line carries that went for, 1 or 2 yards, had a 1-yard touchdown at one point, which is going to affect the yards per carry. So I don't want people to get caught up in that part of it. The part that impressed me the most about him specifically, and a night that really all of the running backs looked pretty impressive, was he showed what he can do, right? He has the physical play on the outside with Rock Ya-Sin, where you called it a car crash collision on the outside, where neither guy really, backed down at all. Mm-hmm. There was a total stalemate in that one, and then punches it in a physical run on the next play. And then to kind of show you what else he has in the bag, the next time they get in the red zone, he pops one out to the outside, has 2 defenders to beat, and is able to get the corner and score a touchdown on a 4th down. So Kamani Vidal, stock up for me in this one. I can definitely see the extra gear Greg Roman talked about, but overall just an impressive night by the Chargers running backs.
It was a really, really good night for the running backs in the room. I liked the physicality that Kamani Vidal ran with, especially because he's a smaller running back, and you're going to have to be able to run in between the tackles. But he showed that he can do that, and also showed the speed to be able to win the edge. So I like that. Also want to give a shout out to Hassan Haskins as well. Feel like he performed exceptionally well tonight. He played like a big running back. He looked like a big running back. He was bowling people over. He was breaking tackles. He looked really good tonight. 6 carries, 34 yards, 5.7 yards per attempt. Even Naheem Hines, had a good solid performance with 8 for 34 and 4.3 yards per carry. So pretty much everybody who touched the football tonight, I felt like looked good. Even with Omarion getting only a couple of carries, I thought you saw what you wanted to see on the 8-yard carry. Him being able to break tackles, being able to fall forward, being just difficult to bring to the ground. I think that's what you wanted to see. Obviously, we weren't going to see many carries out of him because he's the RB1 for the team right now. Yeah. But I think you were encouraged by what this running back room looked like tonight.
Absolutely. And I mean, with Omarion Hampton, he did have the one was a defensive offsides on one where he broke a tackle and kind of dragged 2 other dudes for a first down, but then ended up getting wiped off. Then he has the strong 8-yard run where, he breaks the tackle at the line of scrimmage, great burst through the hole, and it takes 2 guys to drag him down before he's almost already getting a first down. The one gripe, got to be better on that 3rd down play, right? I mean, it was a very small sample size. He tries to bounce one out to the outside. It's a 3rd down. You got to lower your shoulder there on that cornerback and pick up those 2 yards instead of trying to get outside and turning that gain into a touchdown. One small gripe, but I thought Omarion Hampton, even in limited action, looked pretty good.
Ever wished managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Hall of Fame game in the books, and it was not a good performance from the Lions.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast.
Los Angeles Chargers 34, Detroit Lions 7 in the Hall of Fame game tonight in Canton, Ohio. Look, score doesn't count. Score doesn't matter. What does matter is if you tuned into the game to watch your Leos do their thing, it was a sloppy start. It was a poor performance. There were a few things I liked. There were a lot of things I did not like. We will break it all down for you right here on Locked On Lions. Want to thank our everydayers. Shout out to those of you that watch and listen to the podcast daily. Appreciate you. Ran into one of our everydayers tonight at an event I was at with First Securities Mortgage, the great Will Klein, checking out the pod. We appreciate Will as one of our everydayers. Our man, Mike Vanderpool, was checking in. I know Turner Batdorf was watching. Some of our great everydayers. We appreciate all of you. Chargers win 34-7. Look, we had football in July. All right. This is like Christmas in July. And it was cool to see Dan Campbell on the sidelines. Cool to see the uniforms. Maybe the Lions should wear all blue and never wear the silver pants again. Maybe that's what it was. Regardless, it was fun to see football. With that being said, the Lions backups got their ass kicked. Plain and simple. Tonight by the Chargers. Dan Campbell did something that I thought was funny, at least to start the game. He had linebacker Grant Stewart. Apparently, Grant Stewart was doing this during practice. He had Grant Stewart and Dominic Lovett back deep for kick return duty. A linebacker returning kicks. That's correct. Stewart's got decent speed. So it's like, all right, what the hell? Let's put Grant Stewart back there to return a kick to start the Hall of Fame game tonight. And he fumbled. Chargers took advantage, and it was 7-0 before you got comfortable in your lazy boy. None of the starters played. I mean, Dan Skipper played at left tackle because Taylor Decker has been injured and Skipper's been starting in his place. But other than that, you did not see any of the starters on the field tonight. But what you didn't like seeing was the sloppiness. You know, penalties out of the gate, fumbles. Lions had 5 turnovers in this game. The backup quarterbacks were horrific tonight. And there are certain conclusions that you can jump to from preseason, and there's certain things that are stupid. All right. To sit here and go, well, the Lions got beat by the Chargers and this is trouble. And I don't stop. All right. You're going to have mistakes. It's July. All right. I didn't like the fumbles early. I didn't like the penalties early. DiCaprio Poodle or whatever his name is. That dude cannot play. Number 17 cannot play in a regular season game. All right. There are certain things like that, but you want to see improvement from some of the young players. You want to see some depth. Like the Lions' first string offensive line tonight, the guys that started tonight, the likes of Kingsley Equigan and Dan Skipper and Coyote Awashika, those guys weren't bad. They gave Kyle Allen time to throw. The problem is Kyle Allen was throwing the ball to the guys in white uniforms. All right. The first interception that he threw, the out route to Tom Kennedy. Oh, that's right. TK85 was out there, baby. Woo-hoo. You forget he's still on the team. Route was jumped. Kid took it back 59 yards. I've told you since day one, When the Lions signed Kyle Allen in the offseason, I told you he's no good. He's not good. But you know what? Hendon Hooker is no good either, at least right now. Hendon Hooker is young, and maybe he'll prove me wrong, but backup quarterback is an issue. I'm going to get to that. Regardless, sloppiness and just not the crisp Lions that we're used to seeing. It's the preseason. They lost. We move on. But you don't want to see undisciplined football out of the gate. I was switching between the radio feed and the TV feed tonight. And by the way, all right, I love the NBC broadcast. I do. I think Mike Tirico is a friend of the show. I've been buddies with Mike. I've known Mike 30 years. All right. I knew Mike when I was in college at Syracuse. Tirico and Collinsworth do a good job. That's a great broadcast. Melissa Stark on the sidelines is great. But when they interview the Hall of Fame players for 10 minutes during the game, it takes away from the guys on the field. I want to hear Tirico talking about how Grant Stewart made a great stop on a handoff. I want to hear about Isaac Tesla catching 2 passes. And we're not getting that because we're getting Sterling Sharp, who, by the way, never spoke to the media in his career, was a complete jerk. Okay. And look, he's in the Hall of Fame. Congrats to him. Talking for 10 minutes. It's too much. It's too much activity. But again, it's the preseason. It's the Hall of Fame game. They're honoring the Hall of Fame guys. It is what it is. But I was listening on the radio, and TJ Lang and Lomas Brown, Dan, we're talking about, and Dan Miller, we're talking about the undisciplined play early in the game with the penalties and the turnovers and everything. And they're like, Dan Campbell's going to be ticked off. Regardless of whether it's preseason or not, he's going to want to see crisper football. And the Lions did not show that tonight. Now, on the Hendon Hooker interception late in the game when he was trying to hit the 7th round pick, Lovett for a pass deep. It was actually a really well thrown ball. And Lovett actually caught the ball, but as he was going to the ground, it got taken from him. But all in all, not a good performance tonight. Chargers had Trey Lance starting the game at quarterback, and he carved up the Lions. Trey Lance looked really, really good. You want to talk about stats for a second here? If I can get to them here, my computer's acting crazy. Trey Lance tonight had a passer rating of 114.6. You will never, ever see that in the regular season, at least from him. 13 out of 20 for $120 and 2 touchdowns. Meantime, Kyle Allen, 9 for 14, 91 yards, 2 picks, passer rating of 43.2. So their starters' passer rating was 115. Our starters was 43. Positive note, Craig Reynolds scored a touchdown. He scored the only touchdown for the Lions. Come on, Craig. Come on, Craig. And Craig got in. I'm like, yeah, Craig. You know we love Craig on this show. That's my boy. Love Craig Reynolds. And he ran hard. And like I said, the first string tonight offensive line did a nice job. Ekwagon at center played well. Maybe we'll have I think we'll have PFF grades tomorrow. I'm pretty sure we will. Kingsley Ekwagon played well. The backup O-line in the second half, protecting Hooker and the Lions running backs, not great. But look, that's how it went tonight. It just, nothing could get rolling for the Lions. And they lose 34-7 to the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh on the other side. I did like at the end of the broadcast tonight, Tirico and Collins were talking about Harbaugh and Campbell, and they played some clips from both guys. Both guys are so good for the NFL. They really are. Harbaugh is a pro coach. I know he had great success at Michigan, won a national championship. Some think there should be an asterisk. Regardless, guy can coach, and he's a pro coach. That was fun to see. It was, like I said, it was good to have football back, albeit preseason, albeit we're not going to likely see the starters when the Lions go to Atlanta. When are they playing in Atlanta? Next Friday, August 8th. Oh, yeah, baby. Doesn't get much better than Lions and Falcons. But tonight was a little bit concerning because there was some struggles out there.
Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop the closer it gets to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. With Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay, no hidden fees. Plus, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with views from the seat, a panoramic view. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
Heartbreak and anger in the DMV as Terry McLaurin has requested a trade from the Washington Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are reacting to the news that Terry McLaurin has requested a trade, a request that I have confirmed has been made. So Ian Rappaport, not a liar. No surprise there, but I have personally confirmed the news that Terry McLaurin has requested a trade. We're going to unpack the timeline, the conflict, everything that we think and know or think we know is going on with the situation. And finally, we will look at the situation from the Commanders' lens and what we think is going to be the path ahead for General Manager Adam Peters. All that is coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, this is a bonus episode because we wrapped up the week of coverage and we're preparing for a day off of practice when the news broke Thursday night that Terry McLaurin has requested a trade. This is all about the business side of football, right? It's at the end of the day, it boils down to dollar amounts and value and the feeling of worth and all of this stuff. So reports initially coming out from some national outlets. I saw it first from Ian Rappaport of NFL.com. I'm not sure if he's the first one who had it or not, to be honest with you, because as soon as I saw it, I got to work confirming those reports, as is my job. Was able to confirm it. It's not speculation. It is absolutely for real. And it's a little bit of a gut punch, right? Like, I think that's the initial response. I know that there are a lot of Commanders fans out there who have kind of lost a little bit of love for Terry McLaurin through this whole thing. Don't necessarily think that he's doing the right thing or making the right approach to it. I've seen comments of, you finally get a good quarterback and you pull this, and you're missing practices at training camp and doing all these things. But you also have some people out there who say, just pay the man, right? Just give him his money. He's carried this franchise through all the dark days, and he's always had a smile on his face and been the good soldier, and he deserves the money. And that's really where the conflict comes in, because some of you are basically voicing the opinion of the front office, and some of you are voicing the opinion of Terry McLaurin himself. And the key is getting to a middle ground, negotiating, right? And coming to some sort of agreement. That is where we're having this problem. So Terry McLaurin's last contract extension coming in 2022, that same offseason, he did pretty much the same thing he did this offseason, except for the training camp part, because the deal got done in time, but sat out OTAs, sat out the mandatory minicamp, got his contract done, went on to rip off, few 1,000-yard seasons on top of the 1,000-yard season he already had, and became one of the highest paid wide receivers in the National Football League. Now, since he agreed to that deal, the wide receiver market has done what every position group market tends to do, except for like safeties and running backs for the most part, and exploded a little bit, inflated, right? Justin Jefferson has a deal. A.J. Brown has a deal. Amon-Ra St. Brown has a deal. Jamar Chase reset the market. DK Metcalf got paid a ridiculous amount of money. T. Higgins got paid a ridiculous amount of money for their teams. And now Terry McLaurin's contract is no longer considered top tier, and it's no longer considered one of the best. However, he is, by and large, considered one of the best. And is he playing of the level where he's a top 10, top 5 potential wide receiver? Absolutely. Currently, his contract does not pay him as such, and that is where the rub comes in. That is where this holdout comes in. Terry McLaurin not wanting to spend his last year of his current contract playing for the $22.5 million that is remaining on his deal, which I don't have the contract figures firmly in front of me, but you can pretty much, just the way the NFL contracts work, most of that money is not guaranteed, which means were he to get injured or whatever, he's going to miss out on a lot of that money. He's not even going to get paid most of that money. And the rest of that money, if he doesn't get injured, is tied to incentives, which obviously those incentives are somewhat in his control, but also somewhat out of his control. So security a part of it, longevity a part of it. And then if you're looking at the Washington Commanders, you're also looking at age and the projected production arc of a wide receiver that is turning 30 just a couple of weeks into the season. That is, I think, where the biggest problem comes in here, because Terry McLaurin, from just his own words, right, when he made his public appearance after shooting the car commercial in the local area and all this stuff, talking about what he's done, what he has done already in the past, what he has meant to this franchise in the past, the type of player and person he has been on and off the field in the past. And that's a pretty common thread for players wanting new contracts. They want to be rewarded for what they've done, what they've meant to a franchise. If they feel like they've overperformed or outperformed their contract, they want to be compensated as somebody who has outperformed their contract. The GMs and the NFL teams, however, more times than not, they're not going to reward you for what you've already done. You get rewarded by getting the contract you already had, meeting the incentives and getting those payouts as you have, and then also becoming the face of the franchise. We're going to put you on posters. We're going to put you in our commercials, on our ticket sale books, and the season ticket holders are going to get nice little neat packages and gifts that have your name on them. And we're going to, elevate you as a star of the franchise, which will then elevate you as a star in the community. So those are some of the intangible, non-dollar sign carrying things the franchise does as an appreciation for who you are above and beyond your contract. What they're not going to do is pay you, in retrospect for what you've already done. And I think that's a big part of this. So what does Terry McLaurin want? What is the separation here? Well, recent reports suggest, and this is Adam Schefter of ESPN recently reporting, or suggesting, I should say, that it appears, because none of this is definitive, that Terry McLaurin wants more than DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf's current contract that he signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers upon being traded from the Seattle Seahawks is worth over $33 million annual average value. The difference between annual average value and real money is very important. Annual average value is what we all talk about. It's what the fans talk about. It's what the media talks about. It's the total value of the contract when you incorporate bonuses, guaranteed money as far as salaries, and incentive laced money, which players typically never see the full value of the contract. But when we talk about how much a player is worth, what do we talk about? We talk about the annual average value and the total value of the contract. What really provides a player with the sense of security is the guaranteed money. Usually, when you go through these situations and there's a little bit of hold off or a little bit of tension or a little bit of a back and forth or a prolonged negotiation, usually it's the guarantees. It's not the annual average value. It's not the total value. Typically, people can kind of come together and say, here's what we're working with, because you're kind of working with market trends and you're working with data. You're not working with feelings. However, again, just using Terry McLaurin's own words as clues, he is very much coming from a place of emotion and very much coming from a place that is not data-driven. It's partially data-driven, sure, but it's also coming from a place of emotion. He even admitted as such when he was asked, is it hard for you to separate the emotion of this from the business side of it? And he said, yes, it absolutely is. And I think the longer we've gone into this, the further we've gone into this, the more the emotion and the business is starting to blend for Terry McLaurin's side of this thing, while the Washington Commanders are looking at this as if it's a true extension. You're 29 years old right now. You're turning 30 in September, which means you're going to be turning 31 next September when this new extension, if it is a true extension, a tack on to the current year that Terry has left under his current contract, we're talking about paying a 31-year-old wide receiver. And you want us to pay a 31-year-old wide receiver for what a 29-year-old wide receiver did in 2024, plus how he's been off the field, who he's been team captain, all this other stuff. And that's just not how NFL teams tend to negotiate. But there's more to this. There's another part of this. It's not just age, but there's also the cumulative effect of organizational turmoil on Terry McLaurin, but also the new sense of stability that the franchise has under head coach Dan Quinn and general manager Adam Peters.